All right, hello and welcome everyone to the Circuit Stream Play a Piano in AR workshop. Now, before I continue on, I would like to do a quick AV check. So if you can hear me and see my screen, please let me know on the right-hand side in the chat tab here. All right, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Brittany. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Looks like everything is good to go. All right. Now, a couple housekeeping items before we jump into the technical portion of the presentation here. As you have already discovered, there is a chat window here on the right-hand side. Feel free to just engage with the audience here, with everybody amongst yourselves. Share your LinkedIn, network, post some questions, comments. Always happy to see some active people there. We also have a questions tab and a polls tab on the right-hand side. I will periodically toss in some polls that just help us to sort of gauge the audience that we are having here tonight, and to make sure that our upcoming workshops are as relevant as possible to you. Now, if you do have any questions throughout any point of this presentation, please post them into the right-hand side in the questions tab, and that just helps us to keep track of all the questions that we're getting here throughout, and make sure that nothing will get buried in the chat window here. Now, with that being said, we do have a Q&A session at the very end of the presentation here, and we will be going through the questions tab and address all of your guys' questions there, so feel free to stick around for that. Now, one last thing, where is everybody from? Let me know in the chat here. I'll be very curious to see. I myself am from Toronto, Ontario, here in Canada, and I have a couple colleagues here backstage, Steph and Kyle. Oh, Galen, see another Toronto man here as well. Welcome. Texas, Kristen, awesome. Steph from Calgary, Julio from Puerto Rico, Alex from Manchester, awesome. It's always great to see such a diverse range of people joining our workshops here from all parts of the world here. Deepak from Germany. Actually grew up in Germany, so welcome. So yeah, always cool to see where everybody is from here. All right. Continuing on. So, my name is Vladimir, and I'm on the education team here at CircuitStream. I have 2 years of experience in the tech industry since graduating from university, and I primarily have been working in a mining and minerals company where we created software that will basically visualize any sort of geophysical data that is collected in the field. And we actually saw that there is quite a bit of investment happening in AR and VR, specifically when it comes to resource estimation and safety training. So I thought that was incredibly cool, and this is definitely where the industry is headed. So that's what got me really excited in this industry, and here we are right now. So the instructor today is going to be Nakisa, and she has lots of experience developing on the HoloLens and the Magic Leap devices. And interestingly, she's also a part of a circus on the odd occasion here. So I thought that was really, really interesting and cool. Now, a bit more about our team here. So how we got started in XR is when we recognized a gap back in 2015. We essentially noticed that there is really no specialized XR education and training available to people. So we really wanted to address that issue by creating our 10-week XR development with Unity course. And we have taught over 30,000 people ever since. Now, our team is from all over the world. So as already mentioned, I'm from Toronto, but our headquarters are in Calgary, Alberta. But we also have some people in the US, South America, all over Europe and Asia here as well. So super excited to be working with such a global team like that. Now, one cool thing about CircuitStream is we are very proud to be training partners with Unity. And what that means is that all of our instructors here are Unity certified as well. And we are really, really happy and proud about this achievement because training partners get selected on some very specific criteria, which are primarily providing the highest level of education and care possible. So we're super happy to be partnering with Unity here. Now, here are some of the customers who we have worked with before. And you can see there's some pretty diverse and interesting companies on here. So for instance, companies like Apple, the American Navy, Anglo-American, Nike, Facebook, YouTube, even Hershey's, the chocolate company, which is really interesting. So, people and companies from all kinds of industries and all walks of life are heavily investing into XR now. And it is really, really exciting to see the latest level of innovation there at companies like that. And we're very, very happy and proud to support them. Now, how do we support them? Well, we have two main courses here at CircuitStream, with the first flagship program being the XR Development with Unity course. It goes for it goes for 10 weeks and is delivered over 40 hours of class time. Our next cohort is scheduled for February 15th. And I will speak a little bit more about these courses here towards the last bit of the presentation here. But we also have a bit of a more advanced course as well, which is the XR Project Accelerator, going for 8 weeks, 48 hours. And what this one is really meant to do, if you already have some experience in Unity and XR development specifically as well, we can really work together on you and build on your existing knowledge and work on any projects that you might be currently working on. So we can really help you add that last polish or flesh out some last-minute ideas there for your project here as well. And again, I will speak a little bit more about these towards the end. Another thing alongside education, what we do here at CircuitStream is one-on-one support and mentorship. And I think in the education setting, that is extremely valuable because you will essentially get some time with an expert developer to work directly, whether it is your own idea, a passion project, something you want to build out for work, looking to make a switch in careers, or if you would just like to upskill. Having that one-on-one support with an expert developer can really be invaluable for your learning experience there. Another thing that we do here, so we also have some shorter individual courses, which could be a little bit more niche or could be a bit more device specific. And those are a little bit shorter than our traditional courses, and they're going from 3 till 6 weeks in length. And I will talk about these in a bit more detail later on in the presentation here as well. But why are you here today? What are you going to learn? Well, we're going to learn how to set up an AR project in Unity 3D. We're also going to learn how to set up a HoloLens 2 for development and how to prepare your AR project before development. We're also going to learn how to create an environment in AR and how to add interactions and physical objects in an AR environment. Now, at this point, I would like to toss in my first poll here. And what I would really like to know, yeah, sorry, I think my connection just cut out here for a second. But yeah, I'm going to toss in my first poll here. And what I would really like to know is how much Unity experience does everybody have? So now if you could navigate to the right-hand side to the polls tab here and let me know, I would be very curious to find out. All right, we got some, well, okay, we got lots of beginners here. That's awesome. It is a fairly introductory level workshop here, but those of you who have said 5 or above, I would be very curious to hear your thoughts as well, and I'm sure we're going to cover something which may be new for you. So yeah, feel free to stick around. Now, for those of you who have said 0 or 1, what is Unity? Well, Unity is a free 3D development engine for building games, simulations, and experiences. It is also the easiest way to begin making apps for XR. And when we talk about XR, that is used as a sort of blanket term. It means extended reality, which encompasses augmented and virtual reality. Now, how does one actually go about creating their app in Unity? Well, it all starts out with your idea, which you can build in Unity, then push it to a relevant SDK, and then publish to the device that you would like to build on. So yeah, this is very much in a nutshell, and there's quite a bit more to it than that. But yeah, like this is definitely something that we can also get into the courses here as well, and really make sure to not leave out any details there. But anyway, today is all about playing a piano in AR. And with that, I would like to invite Nakisa up to the stage, who will be giving the technical part of the presentation. All right, Nakisa, come on up.
Hi, guys. Can everyone hear me? And alrighty. Cool. Hi, guys. We are going to create a piano in AR. And as you can see, there is also a keyboard in the back there, which is part of the inspiration. Pun. You know, and there is a puppy there. So if you do hear whining, that's because I've created a monster. And so today we will be creating an AR piano. And the very important thing that we need to know about any sort of AR headset is that we are not actually touching anything physical. So a lot of this workshop will be an emphasis onto providing visual and audio feedback to the user. So your hands and all of that lovely stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know what the HoloLens is, it is a head-mounted AR device. And so let's get to it. To get started on the AR device, we need some things. We need some very important tools to install on our computadora. So the very first thing that you need is, unfortunately, you need a Windows 10 computer. Well, not unfortunately, because, you know, PC master race. Anyways, if you are using a Mac, there is, you know, Boot Camp that you can use, but you do need a Windows 10 OS operating system here. And then, of course, you need your Visual Studio, which is 16.8 or higher. And then you also need this lovely Windows SDK. Now, this Windows SDK is specifically for like any sort of mixed reality developmental kit that you have to install onto your OS. And then, of course, you will need either an emulator or the headset itself. Yes. So the way that the headset works right here, lovely little device. We have, well, I mean, if you have a Mac, make no apologies there. Just kidding. Macs have its uses. So we have a head-mounted AR device. So what that means is that your HoloLens, I know it's very expensive, but it is also very incredible. So the HoloLens has one of the most articulated hand tracking capabilities that is currently on the market. Hands down, the best. So in comparison to like your Oculus Quest hand tracking device, your HoloLens is like, oh, so much better. So what we'll be doing is that we'll be using our hands to press buttons for our keys and then playing, of course, a sound, a piano sound, and then providing some sort of visual feedback. Now, the way that we're going to do visual feedback is so cool, is so interesting. So how about everyone let me know in the chat if they have ever tried a HoloLens 2 device before. No. Nope. Okay. Ah, nice. Alrighty. So one of the biggest things for a HoloLens device, this incredible machine, is the fact that it is spatially aware. And what I mean about spatially aware is that, you know, on your typical like AR foundations for your phones, you have like your spatial, or like it places planes down over top any sort of surfaces that it detects, whether it's horizontal or vertical. Now, what the HoloLens does is it recognizes all of those different planes and more. So what it does is it's this thing called spatial mapping. And spatial mapping is creating a bunch of vertices and triangles and like a mesh over an environment itself so that it is recognizing your environment and you, right? Pretty wicked. So the other thing it does is like it tracks your hands. So you can actually grab a digital ball and have it bounce on your floor. This is what we mean by spatial awareness. So now that we get that, let's get started. So I've already created a Unity project that we will be using for this thing. And you don't worry, because you will have a GitHub repo link after everything is said and done. So you can grab it, play around with it, and the way that we're going to set it up, you can also test it in the editor itself. Now, the framework that we will be using is called Mrtk. Not the condos. Microsoft Mixed Reality Toolkit. This is the thing that we are going to use, the benchmark. So in this mixed reality toolkit, we'll have a lot of tools that will enable us to use and utilize all the sensors that are available to us on this headset. And that is what we will be, taking advantage of. Like taking candy from a baby. But don't do that, because that's mean. So this is the project that I have already created. It's the usual, Unity 3D application. And so I have some folders in here. One is audio, and this is all of the audio for my notes here. And I had after I graduated from high school, actually, because I am a classically trained pianist. It's not that big of a deal, guys. I did have a brief stint as a professional pianist, but that career wasn't very noteworthy. So, I have created a scene called Piano Man because, when you're dealing with pianos, it's always going to be a piano man. And the very first thing that you want to do is you need to download the Mrtk Unity package, which is in here. And you can see the description here. And you have release notes in your overview and your feature guides and your API references here. So what we have now, when we are dealing with anything with the HoloLens or with Mrtk itself, it is built on a series of Unity events, and its input system is one of the backbones. Download as a GitHub repo for Mrtk. Yes, this is a GitHub repository for Mrtk, and you can also download under the releases and your release notes here. You can check out the what's important, what's new, and where to download your Mrtk Unity package. And once you have that, you will have something like, let's do a list, details, and there it is. So the very first thing that you want is something called Foundation. There is an emulator, but guess what? You need a Windows 10. Sorry, Max. I'm just kidding. I really want the LiDAR. So the first thing that you want to download is your Foundation 2.4 or 2.5.1. All links will be provided in the follow-up. So have no fear, Galen. And then the other thing that you might want to download too is something called examples. Now, these examples are examples of like hand tracking, of certain inputs of interactable items, and some other fun stuff. We will be combining two of these little packages. One will be like something from your standard assets and something from experimental, because the experimental stuff is Really neat. And who doesn't want to be a mad scientist working with AR? So what you do with your Unity project that you have created, and if you are not familiar with the Unity interface, well, hello there. This is the Unity interface. So on the left-hand side, we have the hierarchy, which is just a list of things that are living in your scene. And now your scene view right over here. So it's only one color now. Your scene view is basically where you will create your digital or AR world. And then, of course, we have your inspector, which will inspect all the different game objects that are currently living in your hierarchy or living in your assets project. So in my audio folder, if I click on my A note, my inspector shows what that thing is comprised of. And I have a little preview here. So I've hit play. Don't know if you can hear that, but that was an A. And could not hear that. There's a possibility you will not be able to hear the piano itself, but that is okay because you could pull the GitHub repo and try it out for yourself. Yes, because there is a trick, a little trick that we will use for converting just one note into an octave higher or an octave lower. So the very first thing that you want to do is import those two packages for Mrtk. In sound we trust. The octave is so high it cannot be picked on the human ear. Not necessarily. So we're going to import those custom assets. Go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and navigate to either your foundation or your examples and stuff like that. And then you need to click on Open. And now I have already done that with this project, so you don't have to worry about all of that stuff. Now I'm going through this really quickly, but that's okay because you can just sign up for the courses and, you know, I can be your instructor and you'll have way more puns. So our scene is not quite set up to do any of our HoloLens. Oh, dang, that's a good one, Tim. Fundamentals. Keeping that one up here. So what we're going to do is we need to configure the scene for our mixed reality toolkit. So once you have imported those things, imported your Mrtk package, you're going to go to the mixed reality toolkit, and we have either utilities, which will configure your Unity project for Mrtk, or add scene and configure. Now, add scene configure will do two things, two very, very muy importante things. So I'm going to click on that. And right away, we have two different game objects. Now this, your mixed reality toolkit, this is basically just like a whole bunch of different configurations that you're going to do and customize. So with Mrtk, any profile that you want in order to protect the original copies, because, you know, what if I make a mistake? Oh God, what if I make a mistake and it's irreversible? I mean, it's possible. I have made many mistakes that are irreversible, but this is not one of them because Mrtk protects you from yourself. In order to do anything with your input, with your spatial awareness, with your hand tracking, with your spatial anchors, eye tracking, any of that stuff, all of that is in a configuration profile that is in your mixed reality toolkit here. So let's do some configuration. The way that we're going to configure this is so that we can play it in the editor, and eventually when that's done and real nice and skookum, which is a Northern BC Canadian term. Skookum just means very well built. Like if it's solid, it's skookum. I am going quite fast. Yes. Skookum. So to make things a little bit more skookum and to make sure that things are skookum, we're going to test it in the editor first and then build it onto the HoloLens. So let's get started. Now, I do not have the final results on the HoloLens itself, but that is perfectly fine. So in the mixed reality toolkit here, we have a default mixed reality toolkit configuration. Now we're going to clone this because if we want to tinker around with anything, we're going to clone. Yeah, we're going to clone the original configuration profile because, you know, Mrtk protects us from ourselves. And then we can tinker with it. So right now, I'm going to click on this clone. And this little pop-up comes here, and I'm going to rename this to, let's do Piano Man. Piano Man Toolkit Configuration Profile. And then click on Clone. And there we go. So now in our mixed reality toolkit, the asset here is our Piano Man Toolkit Configuration Profile. And let's also expand this over here. The next thing that we want is we want to, you know, tinker around with the input. Now your input could be anything. It could be a controller. It could be your hands. It could be your eyes. It's generic enough that your input could be anything like that. So your default mixed reality input system, I'm going to click on that clone and we're going to call this our Piano Man input system and click on clone. And there we go. So once I have cloned that, I have access to something called pointers. A pointer in Mrtk is just anything that, well, points. It could be your eyes, it could be your finger, it could be your Xbox controller, maybe even your leap motion. So in order for us to sort of configure all these things, we can just, you know, clone all the things if we want to. Now, I am going to clone our hand tracking profile because we are going to do some very nifty, but this isn't Star Wars. So I'm going to clone this hand tracking profile. And then what we have here is we have some prefabs that we're going to use to sort of visualize our hands. Because when the HoloLens picks up our hands, it'll mesh that over there. So I'm going to click on clone there. And do that. And we'll call this our Piano Man. Alrighty, so for our hand tracking, we have a joint prefab, which is this little thing. It's just a tiny little square. And then we also have our hand axes, which will show us the little transforms of where a joint is. And then we also have our hand joint sphere, and this will show up near our hand joints. Now, the very important thing here is something called an articulated hand mesh. This is the prefab that's going to have a series of triangles that sort of show where your fingers are and where your joints are, and it'll mesh and conform to what your fingers are doing. So what we're going to do here is every time we push on a piano key, we're going to pulse a mesh through our hand so that we know that we have actually pushed on a button and we can see it visualizing visually and pulsing through our hands. It's super, super neat. And that is right here, our articulated hand pulse mesh. And this has a very special shader that comes from your mixed reality toolkit. It's called hand triangles. Now, this shader has a bunch of different configurations. So it's basically just calculating a whole bunch of different triangles on your hand mesh and then flowing a color from one point to another. And that is what we're going to use for our hand tracking prefab. So instead of that articulated hand mesh, I'm going to drag my articulated hand mesh pulse right there. Yes, it is personalized to your hand. Could I explain the pulse again? Yes. So a pulse, this pulse prefab, this has a very special shader. So the way that shaders work, or any sort of rendering works, is that you have a shader, which is your blocks of code that you can create either through code or through a visual graph like shader graph or amplify shader or something else that you're using. And that has all the information about how something is supposed to look. So in this shader, it's telling the material how it's going to pulse, what color it is, and where it's originating, and how big is this pulse? Is it randomized with noise, or is it thick? Is it thin? All of those things is contained in this shader called hand triangles. So this articulated hand mesh pulse has all of that information about the mesh of our hands and how that's going to look. So we're controlling the color from one point to the next. Making sense? Yes, exactly. It is a visual feedback tool that we're going to use here. Now, the other thing that we have is we have our hand mesh visualization nodes. And we can, visualize everything, or we can, visualize nothing. We're going to visualize everything. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to configure our spatial awareness. Now, to do the spatial awareness here, we are going to make it so that the spatial awareness will have two different observers. Your awareness system has your mesh, and then you also have to observe that mesh. So the way that we're going to do this is that we are going to observe a mesh in the Unity editor and then observe a mesh outside of the Unity editor when we eventually build onto the headset. And so in order for us to do that, we need to do what Star Wars does and clone. So we're going to click on that lovely little clone button, and then we are going to call this our Piano Man Spatial Awareness System. Use the Force. We will be using Force. So we now have a Windows Mixed Reality Spatial Mesh Observer. That is for outside of the Unity editor. Now, to create a spatial mesh observer inside of the Unity editor, it'll basically just create a mesh and on runtime, that is, create a mesh on runtime. So when we hit play and we're testing it, it'll create a spatial mesh. So we are going to create a new one by clicking on this Add Spatial Mesh Observer. And so we can expand that by clicking on that tool. And now this type is going to be a type of Spatial Object Mesh Observer. And we are going to select the Spatial Object Mesh Observer. Very, very long names here. And since we want to, tinker around with this thing, we are going to clone it. There are so many clones you could, potentially make an army. We're going to call this Piano Man and Clone. There we go. So we can have an example mesh, which is right here. And this is the mesh that would be created on runtime when we hit play in the editor. So that is our mixed reality toolkit configuration profile stuff. So the next thing that we're going to do, the prefab is found in your Mrtk, SDK, standard assets, models, and spatial awareness. This is your file directory for your, well, example spatial mesh, where that lives. Now your assets and all of these folders, these are, we can ignore that. We can ignore that little error there. So your assets and your folders, this is basically like a file directory. And you can right click and go to show in Explorer, and that'll show you where your folder lives in your local computadora. Now, it's good practice when we start to create any sort of content for a HoloLens is that you have a single game object right here, and I'm going to create an empty. What this means is that it only has a transform. So this inspector, I'm going to reset this position. So I'm going to put it at the origin, which is 0, 0, 0. And it has X, Y, Z coordinates, which means that this system is in what type of coordinate system? Is it starts with a C? X, Y, Z? Cartesian. Nice. 10 points for Gryffindor and 20 points for Slytherin. So I've created an empty game object here. And by empty, I mean it just has a transform. There's nothing else in it. There's no other component. So if you look in the inspector, the only thing that this thing has, is a transform. And we're going to rename this game object as our content. So everything that we create will be a child of this content. And we can anchor this to somewhere in the world too, so that it doesn't, shift and move around. But we can do that a little bit later on, because when we are dealing with AR headsets, we always want to anchor it to some point in space, because as you move around, calculations and positions shift a little bit. In AR Foundation, you can do this using an AR anchor. In Mrtk, you have a world anchor. You know what? Let's anchor it. We have a world anchor there. So the next thing that we need is we need a piano, right? Have no fear, young Padawan. We have a prefab. That is a piano. So to edit this prefab, or to take a look at its innards, at its organs, we are going to double click to open that up. And there is my piano. And let's take a closer look at these things. So we know that we are editing a prefab, which is a prefabricated game object, because the background is blue. Any changes that you do for a prefab will be saved because the background is blue. She just hasn't been played in a while. Bonus points for who can tell me what type of instrument a grand piano is. Is it a wind instrument? Is it brass? Is it? Exactly. It is a percussion instrument. It is a string, which is great. Awesome answers. So the background is blue here because we are editing a prefab game object. This is what you'll see if you're editing. Well, let's take a look at this hand pulse mesh because that is also a prefab. So if I double click, its background is blue. Now, to get back to piano, we can do this. Yes, exactly. You can duplicate to add more keys and octaves. So if you take a look at this C, now this C button right here, can you see it? Yes. So your C button, in order for any digital object to be interactable with another digital object, you could. I like you, Tim. So what needs to be on a game object in order for it to recognize collisions and stuff like that, it needs to have a very important component called a collider. Now here in the inspector tab for the C game object, we have a box collider here. So that means we can touch it with our digitized fingers for our articulated hand mesh. Now, the other thing that we have that under this box collider is something called a pressable button. This comes from Mrtk. Now, pressable button is basically anything that you can, press as a button. And so under this, we have on button pressed. This works exactly like your UDD UI buttons in that it is an event that fires off other public methods. So when we press this button, it's playing this audio source .play. And the audio source is right here on this game object itself. And its audio clip is a C. So where is that? If I click on that, it'll show me in my project tab down at the bottom, a C audio clip. This could be an MP3. This could be an not an MP4. That's a video. .wave. And then the other thing that we are doing is very important. It is calling the piano surface pulse and calling something called a pulse 1. Now, what this thing is doing, if we click on that again, we see if you were keen, if you had some eagle eyes, you would see every time I click on that, a little game object sort of pops up in the hierarchy to the left-hand side, the top left-hand side. Everybody see that? Boop. Ralph, you're starting to sound like a pirate. So, on the piano, we have a lovely script here. And this script is basically telling us how we are going to control the pulse of a material. And the pulse material that we have is this articulated hand mesh pulse, because guess which prefab is using this material? It is our hand mesh pulse, and there it is. There's the material. It's all coming together now. No, it does not have more intense sound, although that would not be hard to script. So maybe I'll give you a little hint as how you could do that. So we have an audio source here and it's being played. Now in our audio source, we have a volume of 1. So that's its maximum volume. Now you're getting some IoT, which is really fun to play with. And then we also have a pitch and your stereo blend and your spatial blend. Now all these spatial blends are 2D right now, so it'll sound the same whether or not you're far or away from it. If you want to have a sort of 3D spatial blend, you're going to move the slider all the way over to 3D. So that way, the farther you are from an audio source like this, the softer it will be. So if you want like a harder intensity, there is two things that you need. You need the velocity of the key itself, and then you need the volume of your audio source. Now, right now, we're just using a pressable button. You mean spatial audio? Distance modulation? You can do some sort of distance modulation once you grab the audio source. And then, of course, on your key, you have something called a near interaction touchable. Now, this also comes from your Mrtk. It basically denotes a game object as something that you can touch near it. And you can also send events. So is it a touch or is it a pointer? We are going to do a touch, not a pointer. And then you have an interactable right here. And now all of these things, all of these little components come from Mrtk itself. So you don't have to write it. You can just add a component and it'll do its thing. Yes, surface pulse on a button press. So what we have here is, you know what, I'm going to remove this one. I'm going to re-add it. So in order to play anything on a button press, I'm going to click on this little plus icon. And then because that surface pulse lives on my piano game object, I'm going to drag my piano game object from the hierarchy and drop it into that runtime only. And then that no function, I'm going to go to surface pulse and pulse once. It is a public method in this script. Now you can open it up and dig around in this script if you want to. Right up here. Eventually. Like so. Hey, there it is. So we have a parameter name and the origin and your pulse duration and if it's repeating and all that lovely stuff. So you can dig around in this code. It's provided to you by Mrtk itself. The surface pulse script joins the button press to the shader, right? Yes, it does. So in order to use this surface pulse, it needs a surface material right there. And that is an open field that you can drag and drop from your project folder here. So that is what happens. Yes, it's from Microsoft. So that is what happens for this octave right here. Now, what about the other ones? Because they sound different, right? Let's look at this one, because this will sound different from middle C. This is an octave lower. So this has an octave pitch script. Now, when we are dealing with frequencies and sound, we are also dealing with something called a semitone. And so it's a general rule of thumb that to decrease the pitch or the frequency of a note, it's 1 to the power, or 1.0, this number, to the power of whichever number of semitones that you want to increase or decrease it by. So an octave is 12 semitones. So we have the number of semitones here, and here it is -12 because this note is lower in pitch than this note, this middle C. So if you take a look at this C right here, we have the number of semitones, which is 12. So it will be an octave higher. And then, of course, you have your audio source there. So we're going to backspace. Well, if you think Unity is always going to do, yes, you can fit 3 octaves in your HoloLens field of view there. So I am going to get this piano prefab into my content. So I'm going to click on that and drag and drop it onto my content here. So now there is, whoop, where are we? Where are we here? Yeah, there we go. So this is my piano. Now I'm just going to position it so that it's kind of sort of like roughly in an area where once I start the HoloLens, it'll, it'll just be there and float there. So I'm going to set the position to something like negative 0.11. And then the Y, it'll be like down a little bit. So let's do 3. And then let's do like 0.2 in the Z. Those numbers are just something that I've experimented with doing the things. So now we have a very important thing to do. Very, very important thing to do. Because, for example, if you're writing a Word document and then you just close your Word document, what happens? You lose your work. What did we forget to do? Okay, clone isn't always the answer, Tim. It is mostly the answer. Yes, you save. Control or Command S. Command S is for all of you Mac people. Because I still love you. So we have our piano, and then we have our game view. So, you know what? Let's hit play and see if it works. Yeah, okay, there we go. So we have the game view here. And you know what? There's something that I forgot to do. A very, very important thing. Because right now, we are in a build setting that is not a Windows mixed reality. So let's switch things over to the build settings. I'm going to go to File and Build Settings. And this is our build settings right here. So in order for us to build anything, we need to add the scene. So I'm going to click on Add Open Scene. And my Piano Man scene is the scene that I'm going to build. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to a universal Windows platform. And the target device is going to be my HoloLens. And the architecture is not going to be x64. It's going to be ARM64. That is a very important step. And we're going to switch the build. If you're building for Android or iOS, you just click Switch Build, click, and Switch Build. But we are using a universal Windows platform. So your camera object is under your mixed reality play space in the same way that AR Foundation under your AR Session Origin has an AR camera. Making sense? The target device is the HoloLens, yes. If you do change it to an Android build settings, you will need to configure your mixed reality toolkit configurations to be an Android build. And then it'll work. Your Mrtk framework is a lot like your XR interaction toolkit in that. Oh, yes, there we go. And then we also have our little pop-up there that's like, hey, you switch your build, enable all the things that you need for Mrtk. So your Mrtk is a cross-platform framework that you can use, just like XR Interaction Toolkit. You can also make something that is for your Oculus Quest if you wanted to, using Mrtk. And so we have this project configurator, and you can click on apply to do all the things there. So that enable legacy XR. It's my dog's birthday coming up. And, you know, I threw a ball for him outside, and it was a bit much, but, you know, it was his birthday. I wore a gown and everything. So it looks like we have switched our build, so we can close that. And then we can close that as well. And then there is a very important next step. I am using a 2019 version of Unity. So I'm going to go to my project settings because under my player settings, I need a very important SDK, and it's the Windows Mixed Reality SDK there. That is what I need, and you can check that to make sure that it will play. And then we can close that as well. And let's see. That should. Actually, I'm forgetting something. This 24-bit depth, change that to 16. Now, this is just a physical capability of your HoloLens. It can only render things with 16-bit depth, not 24. And that's just how color is represented in your headset. So now that that's all switched over, let's hit play. Hey, there we go. So this is your example mesh that we have created using your spatial awareness system and that spatial object mesh observer. And then we can also move around here. And there we go. So we can use our WASD keys to move it. There it is. There is my piano. So we can see my little cursor here. And this is good for iteration because, yes, it is an arbitrary mesh. This will be an example of the mesh that you'll see in your headset when we eventually build this thing. Now, to do any sort of like tapping or navigation type thing, to test it in the editor, you hold a spacebar and then hover your cursor over there, and then you can. There we go. Now you can't hear it, but it is AC. And you can see that they is pushing down there. And then let's do a lower one. Where is my cursor? Yeah. There we go. That is an octave lower. And then we have this one right here. That is an octave higher. And then you can also. Cool. Let's see. Unfortunately, you can't. You can pull it from the GitHub repo and, try it in the editor. It should work there. Now that is all working, I'm going to exit play. And then the moment we have all been waiting for. Building it onto the device itself. Now I'm going to wake up this headset and turn it on. Now, one of the great features about the headset is actually something that's physical, because whoop, and there we go. And there we go. So I know this looks like a bunch of magic, but you do have to log in using a PIN. There we go. So when you're working with a HoloLens device, like so, It's very, very neat. If you hold up your wrist here, you'll have like a little, you will have a little Windows icon that shows up on your wrist that you can just like tap and you'll be at the home page. So let's build it. Let's build it. I'm going to go to my edit, or actually my file, and build settings, make sure that that is all done. And then I am going to click on build. And I'm going to create a new folder called builds. And double click to open that up and select folder. And it'll be building. Now, a very important thing that you need to do is you always need to make sure that your build configuration is release. Now, the way that I've connected my headset here, I know, right? I am connecting my headset by USB. And then I'm going to my Windows device portal here. And let's see. So it looks like I'm offline. Let's refresh that. Advance, proceed. And there we go. So everything looks good. And I'm now connected to my HoloLens device. Yes, Richard, I am just about to show you how we are going to mirror this. Now, it will look very laggy because, you know, I'm connecting through my headset through Wi-Fi, and you're seeing it through your web application here. But let's go to our home and then our 3D view here. So it is tracking my headset right there. And then we're going to click on my mixed reality capture here. And now we can do is we can click on a live preview, which will show you what the HoloLens is seeing here. There we go. Oh, let's close that. So you see, there is my Windows. And there is my button there. There we go. So see that? And then press that, and there is my menu. Pretty cool, huh? You can also record from here. And let's see if this is done. It should pop up here. Alrighty. So now there's a number of different ways that you can get a build onto your HoloLens. I'm going to show you one way. I'm going to my builds, and this is the solution that Unity has just created. So I'm going to right click in there and go to open with Visual Studio 2019, because what do we need from our install tools here? We need Visual Studio 2019. And this is where we launch to the headset. Now I'm going to click on this debug and go to release. Now remember in our build settings how we selected our ARM and then we're going to ARM64? We are going to go ARM64. And now it's not going to be a remote machine here because my headset is plugged in by USB. So I'm going to click on that and go to device. And then fingers crossed that everything works. Oh God. Hit play. And then we'll build. Because you know what? Everything is awesome. But not really, that's a lie. Susan. Okay, yes. Okay. Fair. So speaking of stormtroopers and Disney and all that stuff, what languages do oranges speak? Mandarin. It's one of my favorites. right? So when you sort of like creating something for the HoloLens, you really need to have a HoloLens device. You can test it as much as you want in the editor, but eventually you will have to build and deploy to your device because we are now dealing with a device that is spatially aware and very aware of the human body and what it can do. Oh God, this is my COVID hair. So because of that, you do need to test it on the device just to make sure that, like, you know, hands are tracking and it feels intuitive. So when it comes to designing your applications here, you're really going to want to, you know, test every day on the device if you have that available for you. So the world anchor is, let's bring that up again. Your world anchor for your scene content here is really just this world anchor here. Now we can't really take a look to see what's inside of that, but Mrtk does have documentation as to what this world anchor does. It basically acts like an AR anchor in AR Foundation, where it just, you know, anchors an object to a certain point in space, which will be somewhere, which will be at the origin, 0, 0, 0. Yes, relative to the HoloLens to origin. So now we can just, you know, relax and hope that everything works out and nothing is damaged. Now, you do have to make sure that when you are building that your HoloLens doesn't go to sleep like a toddler taking a nap. So every now and then you do have to check to make sure. You know, it's funny how the world has changed in the past year, and how everybody thought, you know, the coronavirus was a joke, but now everybody gets the joke. Everybody got it. No, just kidding. Okay, so, there we go. And let's check out our Windows Mixed Reality, and let's see. So it has built and it has launched. And, oh, my piano is way up there. So, you know what? We are going to restart the application because now it has built onto my device itself. And we can see that it has, let's go to home, close that. And then we will start the application again. Oh, Windows device, live preview. There we go. And then let's go to all apps. And where was it? It was, there it is. Oh, there. So you can see my hand. And then where did that piano go? Do have to find it again. Where did it go? And we can see that, oh, it is meshing. I saw it. Where did it go? I might be a little blind here. know, I'm trying to find the virtual piano. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Okay, so adjustments may need to be made, but let's press that. Let's see. And my hand is tracking, and there we go. And we can see that when we push it, it is pulsing my hand. There we go. Oh, shoot. Okay. Boop, 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 boop. So yes, that is, Findex? Oh, you guys are testing me now. Let me play some Rachmaninoff here. Oh. There we go. And that is how quick does the sound feedback feel? Well, it depends on the performance that you've created for your app. So you would have noticed that there was a little debug menu that sort of came up. How many keys can you press at the same time? As many as you want, as long as you have your finger joints and all of those hands, or articulated hand things that are being configured. And so that is creating an AR piano with a HoloLens. By harmonizing, you mean playing keys at the same time? Because you can certainly do that. Let's also drag that down a little bit more. Control S to save. And that is doing a piano.
All right, Makisa, thank you so much. That was awesome. And it's always a nice bonus to learn some extra puns in addition to XR development. So always appreciate that. But yeah, hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. As mentioned before, we will circulate a recording to everybody here right after the workshop, as well as any project files, so you can follow along on your own time here. But yeah, just have a few more housekeeping items just before we jump into the technical part, into the Q&A part of the presentation here. I'm just going to share my screen again. So yeah, just wanted to mention some of the people who have taken our XR course and where they were able to move on in their careers as a result. So for example, we have a first example here, Mike Oakes, who has been working as a database engineer for over a decade. And now he's working at Unity after taking our 10-week course, out of all places. So I thought that was really, really cool. Another good one is Jennifer Swann, who got accepted to the Oculus Launchpad program after taking our course. And if you're not familiar what the Launchpad is, so essentially she received $30,000 after pitching her idea to a panel of judges there to work on her own project there. So super cool, and we're really happy for her. Another interesting one is Matt DeLallo. Do we have any poker players in the audience here by any chance? If so, Matt's company, Lucky VR, has created this multiplayer poker game called Poker Stars VR. It's really super cool. You can check it out on Steam or on the Oculus store there. So yeah, really, really cool example of what we can do here with XR. Now, as promised, a little bit more about the courses themselves. So our flagship program is the 10-week XR development with Unity course. We will essentially walk you through the entire foundations of creating your prototype and then deploying your idea on your device within 10 weeks, right? We'll also jump into C# fundamentals in this course. So if you have no background in C# or any sort of programming background at all, no problem at all. We will start from the fundamentals and make sure that nobody falls behind there. Then we also have the one-on-one support on a personal project as well. So in addition to class time, every week you will get 1 hour with an expert developer like Nakisa to work on your personal project there. And it can really be anything, right? So it doesn't have to be related to the course directly, but it can just really be anything that you're working on currently yourself in Unity for AR or VR. Now, again, no experience is required for the course, so beginners, have no fear. If you're a little bit more advanced and you're just really looking to upskill or add to your existing skill set here, we do have a 8-week XR Project Accelerator course as well. And here we really build on your existing experience with Unity and C#. The course gets delivered over 6 hours of class time per week for 8 weeks. And again, we will also have the one-on-one support sessions to work on your project, whether it's personal, something for work, or related to the class there. Now, a little bit more about the individual courses. Also, as I already mentioned, we do have some more niche and more targeted courses available as well that are a little bit shorter in length. And those are C# scripting fundamentals in Unity, Introduction to XR Design, Oculus Quest Development Foundations, and HoloLens 2 Hand Tracking and UI. So if you're looking for maybe a shorter course and you just really would like to upskill in a certain topic, these might be for you. Now, all of our courses also come with payment plans going from 3 to 12 months. And that's just to make it more accessible to a wider range of students there. So if you have any questions about financing plans or would like to talk any numbers, we're here to help. Now, again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you everyone from the admissions team. I'm sure you saw backstage my colleagues Kyle and Steph who have been answering some of your questions here. And all of us are working on the admissions team, and we're really here to make sure that you have no unanswered questions about XR development, and we could really help you guide towards the right path for your education here. So yeah, would be super happy to get in touch with you if you have any questions for us. Now, if you're curious to learn a little bit more about the courses here, the best way to check those out would be on our course page on the website. And you can also get in touch with us there directly by emailing education@circuitstream.com, or you can just start a live chat on our website. We're online most hours of the day, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible here. So now we're going to jump into the Q&A section. If any of you have any leftover questions from the presentation here, please put them in the chat right now. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into some of the earlier ones you've gotten here. So we've got one here by George Hernandez. We're going to answer this one live. Is there any overlap in skills from Autodesk Maya and creating AR in Unity?
Yes, absolutely. So when you're creating things in Autodesk Maya, you have that like little hierarchy that's like a list of maybe like your joints, maybe different components there. That hierarchy will be very, very important when you are doing any sort of 3D modeling or importing your objects into Unity itself, because those two things are basically the same. And you want to keep things nice and organized, real nice and skookum.
Awesome. Thank you, Nakisa. All right. Sorry, everyone. I just wanted to toss in a quick poll before we continue with the questions here. I should have done it one question ago, I realized. But yeah, on a scale from 1 to 10, if you could just navigate to the right-hand side on the polls tab here, how likely are you to recommend this workshop to a friend? And this really just helps us to find out what kind of workshops we should be hosting going forward here. And you know, and it's always nice to see how much value people are getting from them. And like I said, it looks like people are really enjoying the session here. So that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. You know, speaking of Matt and poker, there's a reason why I don't play poker, and it's because I have a chip on my shoulder.
Workshop where we discover fun and nothing else. I feel like that would be super. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. What other questions do we get?
Let's go forward. All right, so we got one here from Swann. Do we need any extra devices besides mobile phones?
Yeah, you could have a Quest. If you have a HoloLens 1, there's a HoloLens 1. Or second generation HoloLens, there's Magic Leap. There's even some like leap motion stuff that we could do. There was a really interesting project that was all about controlling Unity through, or like controlling VR stuff through, it was like this EEG like brain control device. It was like really, really interesting. That was a lot of fun. It was like, being telepathic.
All right, pretty cool. All right, Fadi is wondering, is the whole event, will this be this detailed for beginners? I suppose that is pertaining to the course.
Define events. Because the events could be anything. The whole event as in the XR development with Unity. The XR development with Unity, you can be beginners. I will emphasize, though, that if you are a complete beginner, I highly, highly recommend the Intro to C# development course with Unity that we offer here. That will really, really help your understanding with what we're doing in VR and what we're doing in Unity and some of the VR and AR functions there.
Perfect, thank you, Nakisa. All right, Ben is asking, can we use the Oculus SDK to make this work on a Quest 2?
No, I'm just kidding. Yes, absolutely, you can. You have Oculus. Yes.
Perfect. All right, James McKay is asking a good question here. Could we use the same AR Unity assets or similar workflow and output eventually with ARKit package?
Yes, absolutely. Now, when you are dealing with mobile AR, you do have to be aware of your triangles and vertices and something called a draw call. Your draw calls are basically packaging all of your textures into one giant call so that you're not calling all of these textures and rendering them repeatedly. So you will have to be a little bit more sensitive to the quality of assets because, you're not dealing with a massive gaming PC.
All right. Okay, interesting question from Galen here. Is it possible to emulate the headset to demo on a mobile device?
Which headset? A HoloLens or a Quest or something like that? It is possible to do those things. With the HoloLens 2, you have your HoloLens 2 emulator. That's a good question because I've never actually deployed any sort of Mrtk packages to my phone. But you know what? That's a real good question. I'm gonna make a little note of that. Thank you. Who done it?
Yeah, and we'll get back to you on that one here. Okay, seeing an interesting question here from Anthony. How does the HoloLens 2 hand tracking compare to leap motion?
So the HoloLens 2 hand tracking is the best of its class right now. Now, your leap motion, I would say, is a little bit more precise in its tracking. Now, you can integrate your leap motion hand tracking device for your HoloLens 2. There's like a little mount that you can purchase for your HoloLens 2, and the SDKs for your leap motion and your HoloLens 2, like Mrtk, are very interchangeable. So yeah, I would say if you want something a little bit more precise, even though your HoloLens 2 hand tracking is pretty precise, your leap motion is probably going to be like a little bit better.
Awesome. Okay, Deepa is asking, is there a less pricey alternative to HoloLens 2? HoloLens 1?
Oof. Yeah, well, I mean, the HoloLens 1 is getting a little bit more difficult to get around here. There's currently like 3 different head-mounted AR devices that you could purchase. One is your HoloLens 2, one is your HoloLens 1, and the other one is called a Magic Leap. So your Magic Leap 1, ML1, is another type of like head-mounted AR. Yeah, that's another option that you could go with. Its SDK is different, but it does have documentation that you can wade through. And I do have dev experience launching and creating apps for both devices and both environments.
All right. Alina's asking, aside from the current pandemic restrictions, what is the best way to test drive the HoloLens 2 without buying it in Canada? Do some of the major tech retailers carry it in store?
Ooh, that's a toughie. That is a toughie. If you're thinking of like Best Buy does not carry a HoloLens 2. It is getting your hands and testing a HoloLens 2 device is going to have to be through a Microsoft either store or like partnership or something like that. The HoloLens 2 device isn't marketed to like a consumer platform. It's marketed towards like, you know, big businesses like some construction firms and some architectural firms, engineering firms. Those types of things.
All right. Interesting question here from B. When the real environment, like horizontal vertical surfaces in AR Foundation, is being meshed, will it be one single mesh or a group of different meshes? I mean, will it be possible to distinguish between meshes of furniture and floor meshes and so on?
Yes, there is a number of different ways that you can distinguish a mesh from a floor and a mesh from like a piece of furniture and stuff like that. Now, the HoloLens itself does not make that distinction. You will need some sort of object detection if you're going that route. Now, if we're dealing with object detection, there are 2 different ways that you can go through that. There is OpenCV, which is a machine learning program, which is super, super nifty to play around with. And there is also TensorFlow that you can script to recognize certain game objects and certain things, you know? The other way, if you are just looking for detecting a vertical surface versus a horizontal surface, there is a nifty little mathematical property called a cross product. You thought you were going to get away from math? No, but it's okay because I can guide you. And that is one of the ways that you can detect a horizontal surface and a vertical surface.
Perfect. Thank you, Nakisa. All right. Elif is asking, do you advise using Lean Touch for mobile Vuforia AR gamers? Games, rather, sorry.
I mean, yeah. Lean Touch is a very powerful tool that you can use for detecting any of your like finger touches and all that stuff. So when you're using, and this is true for like any sort of Unity 3D application for mobile, you can use Lean Touch for that too. Now, I do have to mention that when you're using an AR game like Vuforia, there will come a point where you will have to pay for a subscription to use Vuforia. So, you know what's, perfectly free for you to use? It's called AR Foundation.
Perfect. All right. Pavel is asking, is HoloLens 1, which I had a chance to experience once, compatible of similar musical applications, or is it completely different?
I would say it's completely different. The HoloLens 2 and its capabilities, its sensor fidelity, its hand tracking, all of the onboard stuff that come with the HoloLens 2 are leagues better than the HoloLens 1, especially with its field of view. So it's much more immersive and practical on a HoloLens 2 device than a HoloLens 1. Even though the HoloLens 1 is like pretty decent. But, it's the first generation of a new budding industry that's, we're still inventing.
All right. Ria is asking, how far Mrtk compares to other platforms?
Far is a very general word. You mean like far out, dude? Because like it's it's pretty generic in that there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do and what comes with MRTK as opposed to your XR interaction toolkit, or like your Steam VR type thing. Your mixed reality toolkit is designed to work for your VR applications and your AR applications. So I'd say that MRTK definitely has like a lot of bite to its bark.
Awesome. Right. Tim is wondering, is there a way to unlock multiple finger interactions in Unity using MRTK, not just index finger interactions?
Yes. Yes, there is. And it's not really like unlocking, it's more of like understanding how to get your articulated finger positions and that whole thing. Now, there's two ways that you could do this. You could either use your pointer finger or your pointer information, or like your index or articulated hand information. Now, all of these things, they are inherited from like interfaces in MRTK. So as long as you're inheriting like comma after mono behavior comma I something, you can grab the MRTK event arguments, and from there you can access the positioning of your fingers and all those finger interactions as well.
Awesome. Right, a really interesting question here by Philip. In what industries do you think AR will have the biggest impact?
Okay, in what industries? Definitely construction. Absolutely construction. Like if you think of like oil and gas industries, or anything that is using like drawing checkups and like some of those industries. So there's so many different ways that you could use a mixed reality AR head-mounted device. And one of those ways could be like safety. One of those could be like examining placements of like a concrete pillar, and like if something is off, if something is not off. It's like, oh, there's so many different ways and so many different industries that AR has an impact on. Like the HoloLens headset, it's already being used, I think, by like some big car companies to manufacture and refine car designs. And I think like McLaren is doing something like that, even though they still have their traditional ways of like building the entire thing out of clay. Which is kind of, overkill, but it's McLaren. Yes, you are correct, Susan. There's Volvo, there's Toyota. I believe Ford is also doing something. Yeah, there's so many. There's a number of different industries that will be hugely impacted by AR.
All right. Yeah. I think we got a follow-up question on that here from Ria, who's asking, are these companies making their own apps as well?
It depends. It depends. There's outsourcing the development of an app, and there's also like having third parties develop the apps themselves. CircuitStream also does content creation for making VR and AR apps as well. So I am also part of the development team for CircuitStream. So I've been on the team for developing our sort of InVista clients and Avenue Living client applications there. So it really depends on the company's sort of goal and what they want to do with it. Sometimes they will have a hired internal team that are specifically dedicated to XR development, like Susan. And sometimes it's outsourced.
All right. Thanks for that, Nakisa. Okay. Yeah. So we have time for about 3 more questions here. So let's keep going here with Richard. Richard is asking, when developing an app, is it better to think of AR and VR as separate fields that require separate skill sets, or AR and VR as all under XR development that is then released for VR and AR as a separate platform?
So the skills used and like the design thinking behind AR and VR are very similar. It's very much like a very close Venn diagram of skills. If you don't know what Venn diagrams are, it's those circles that are overlapping. So there's very much a lot of overlap for both the AR and VR circles. Like if you think of how you are designing like a world space UI, this world space UI would be very, very similar, if not identical, in VR as well as AR. And it's just like how you interact with those things. Like, are you using a pointer controller? Are you using a finger touch? Are you using like head ray casting? Like all of those things. So the skills required for AR and VR are very, very similar, if not identical.
All right, thank you, Nakisa. Jacob, how have you been, man? Hope you're doing well. He's asking, is there a way to use particle colliders on HoloLens?
Yes, there is. And you want to know a really good way to visualize particle colliders? It's called fluid simulations, and it is so cool.
That sounds pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
All right, last question here from Lee. Are there any consumer-level AR glasses that you're keeping an eye on?
North Focals, which was recently bought by Google. Now, North Focals aren't like truly AR glasses in that they don't have any sort of, yes, I did say fluid sims, in that they don't have any sort of spatial awareness. It's basically just like a heads-up display. It's like having a smartphone, or not a smartphone, but like a smartwatch, but like on your eyes. So that's what AR Focals does, and they're doing some really neat stuff. They won't open up their SDK though, which makes me think that it might be a little messy in there. But yeah, that's what I would keep an eye on.
All right, good stuff. All right, well, Nakisa, thank you so much again for answering all these questions and delivering this amazing presentation and keeping us all entertained. Well, as entertained as possible, I guess.
Always best way to learn is to have fun.
Exactly. Yeah, always a great pleasure to have you on. And thank you so much on behalf from CircuitStream and everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been always a really great pleasure hosting these kind of workshops here for you guys. And just super happy to hear that everything went well and that you're really enjoying these. So yeah, thank you again. One last thing. We will record, the session has been recorded, and we will circulate a recording to everybody here, along with any project files from the workshop as well. So keep an eye out for an email from us in the following few hours. And that pretty much wraps it up. Again, if you would like to get in touch with us, just head over to our website, go on the course page, and or just send us an email to education@circuitstream.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you guys out here. And with that, thanks again, Nakisa, and have a good night, everyone.
See you guys.
See you.